Welcome to the introduction video of FLOWSTER DCS Data Center Shutdown. In this presentation, I will demonstrate you the most important components of the internet platform of DCS. This helps you to have an overview over the tool. In the beginning, we start with a dashboard. There are two essential things to mention. On the left-hand side, we have the so-called monitoring. Once we start this, all the configured rules will be activated and executed, in case certain thresholds, which have to be still configured, are exceeded. You can manually start your own defined rules on the right-hand side, to start, for example, certain maintenance tasks. With a click on the manual shutdown icon, you see all the configured rules which can be started and executed. We can change other settings through the menu bar above. There we can see our logging, a live logging and a history logging on the right side. We can sort our history logging regarding starting date, ending date, different sources or log levels. Now we can see what is registered in the log. Consequently, we can always retrace former actions. We can access the main event over the menu tab Configuration. Here on the left-hand side are all the menu entries we are able to go through to configure our tool. To change the general settings, we switch over to Settings. The entry Unlisted VMS Delay is of highest interest, which shows the waiting time till not configured machines are going to be shut down. Under the entry Logging, you see rudimentary settings regarding the logging. To set an administrator, which should get all the messages and an email from which these emails should be sent, you need to click on the entry Mail. We can save our settings or restore old settings by using the entry Backup and Restore. Afterwards, there is the so-called work time plan. This is helpful to create a work time plan which contains a name, a starting date, ending date, and the weekdays. In case a rule in a configured work time plan is activated, it won't be executed. Instead, an email is sent to all listed addresses. An administrator, which is currently at his desk, can manage this manually, if the system should not act automatically. Let's take a look at the settings for individual machines. You can deposit certain credentials, which will be used later to access resources. Those will be named. You can also add a domain, a username, and a password. Those will be required later. So, let's configure our hosts next. ESX hosts, vCenter, Hyper-V, and XenServer can be configured. These get also a name and a connection address, a username and a password. Three different kinds of entities are considered. There are virtual NODs, native machines, and hypervisors. As an example for virtual machines, you can add a name, an IP address, and a UID address, no matter if it's a FLOWSTER server or not. The auto discovery is very useful here. Former set hosts can be chosen with the purpose of automatical detection which exact machines are available. With this, you may choose the machine easily. With a click on Save Change, we can add this endpoint. If you want to add more endpoints at the same time, it's possible to use the imports in form of a CSV file. After all entries are configured, you can collect all of them into shutdown groups. Those are logical units which consist of a name and a description. You can add a former defined ending point after creating such a group in the lower field. By doing that, you choose the credentials, which apply to the machines and the type of the shutdown. You have to distinguish between a native Windows, a native Linux, a virtual machine, and a hypervisor or a script. But more on that later. Scripts which are used to shut down certain machines can be managed in a script manager. You can give them any name. They have the ability to execute a PowerShell script on a remote machine, a local PowerShell script, or a SSH connection. The script code will be entered into the field and sent to the particular machine. After the separation of the groups, the single sensors which should be reacted on need to be defined. Under the entry SNMP devices, you can add any physical sensor. This will get a name, an address, a port to react on, the community which is used, the SNMP version, and the current status if the machine is active or not. After the physical sensor or SNMP tool is configured, you need to configure the sensor value, which should be used, also known as the so-called triggers. Those also get a name, like temperature, the necessary OID that has to be used, and the defined SNMP tool to test. To check if the OID is correct, you can request any example date from the chosen sensor. By doing this, you can check the data type and request any example data. This is important since it's not always given in which format the data is presented. It's possible, for example, that the temperature isn't shown as 18 degrees, but as 180. After all necessary values are configured, you add them to the former configured tools. We added in our example the trigger temperature to our temperature sensor 1. After the SNMP tools and its values are configured, you are able to create the rules. In this example, we have a rule which will become active in case the temperature of the server room exceeds 40 degrees Celsius. The rules have a name, a description, a timeout field, and a logic expression. Therefore, two values can be used at a time. You can decide in the lower field which evaluator should be used and which threshold is valid. Our evaluator should be greater equal and our threshold equals 40 in case of 40 degrees. We can also see our data example so we don't use the wrong value range by accident. After all our rules are set, we can add them to different groups. Therefore, we navigate to Shutdown Rules. Shutdown rules are logical combinations between shutdown groups and trigger rules. The shutdown rules got their own names and descriptions. You can add shutdown groups in the lower field, which should be executed if a certain trigger rule is activated. It is important that the order of the shutdown groups is the same as the configuration order. You can find more information on our website, FLOWSTER-solutions.com.